Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our second webinar in the Energy Careers and Leadership series. My name's Alan Rossiter. I'm Executive Director, External Relations and Educational Program Development for UH Energy. And next slide, please. And as I said last week, that's my picture. Next slide, please. Just a quick summary for those of you who are not familiar with the series, but we have actually we have 6 webinars scheduled, and I have the first 5 presenters on the screen here. Last week we had Ray Bonato from Google X, or X as it's now called, gave a great talk on entrepreneurship. Today's speaker, you'll find out more about him in a few minutes, is Don Victory. Coming up next week is a legend in energy efficiency, Sharon Nolan from Eastman. She works in the same field that I did for many years, which is industrial energy efficiency. Next, the following one will be Jane Stricker from the Greater Houston Partnership. She leads the Energy Transition Initiative, Houston Energy Transition Initiative for them. So I'd get my mouth around that somehow. And then our 5th speaker is going to be Sindhu Balan, investment principal at Chevron Technology Ventures. And so we have a great lineup of speakers and some very interesting topics that cover the spectrum really of energy. Next slide, please. For those of you who are wanting to qualify for the certificate in energy leadership, just a quick summary, this is open to enrolled students at institutions of higher education, not just at University of Houston, but wherever you happen to be. In order to be eligible, you need to include your institution name and your student ID when you register for the series. And when you join each of these webinars, you do need to use your personal Zoom link, which allows us to verify that you attended. And you have to complete the quizzes for each of the webinars before the next webinar, basically. Ideally, the late Thursday night on the day before the webinar, and the passing grade is 80%. And these tests or quizzes are available on Canvas, and you should have received a personal invitation to Canvas to do this. Next slide, please. Okay, so we have a number of upcoming events, and in a moment, you'll hear a little bit about Energy Coalition events, but this is a specific event by UH Energy, which is the organization or the unit that I work with at the University of Houston. Obviously, an energy-related event. And this is a symposium, a UH Energy symposium, the Gulf Coast Hydrogen Ecosystem Opportunities and Solutions. And so this is obviously a very topical subject for any of you who are looking at the current activities in energy around the Houston area. And I will, when I stop speaking, I will put a link in the chat, which will enable you to directly access the registration site. Those of you who are into QR codes, you can also scan that off the screen. Next slide, please. Just one final thing from me. Just some protocol while we're in this meeting. Please, if you are not a presenter or a speaker, stay muted with your video off. This just saves bandwidth, and it also helps to avoid interruptions in the webinar. So just please keep that in mind. Next slide, please. And I'd like to hand over to our moderator for today, who is Paul Biaronga. And he is the Vice Chair Education for UH's Energy Coalition, which is our student energy group. And he's a graduate student in the physics department. So over to you, Paul.
Thank you so much, Alan, for the initial debrief. And I'm also delighted to be the moderator of this webinar. As Alan said, I'm Paul Biaronga, the Vice Chair Education of the UH Energy Coalition. I'm also pursuing a PhD in physics and in my 3rd year. Next slide, please. And I want to take this opportunity to introduce to you the Energy Coalition. And this is the largest energy-focused student organization in the US. We're working with a number of colleges, up to 8 with very many student organizations. That's why we are called a coalition with over 30 majors. So this makes our energy coalition a multidisciplinary coalition that is taking care of all students from different disciplines to be part of this. And to be part of the energy coalition, you only need to be just a university student. We don't ask for any subscription, and I'm calling upon all members, all students, to come and join our energy coalition. You can look up at our website to learn more about us. Next slide, please. On top of that, we have a number of upcoming events, networking events with energy professionals. I'm going to talk about one specific one coming very soon, which is very hot. And these sessions give us opportunities to meet professionals and faculties, professionals from industry, to give us insights about a lot of knowledge in the industry to prepare us for the life after when you go out of school. We have career readiness sessions. We also meet a lot of professionals and faculties to guide us, to guide students about what we need to learn, both in school and outside of school. We are having a crawfish boil, a collaborative event. The Energy Coalition is organizing this event with the Cullen College of Engineering. And in this event, we are also having a number of industry professionals that are going to come and then speak to the students. So these networking events help students to learn a lot. And I would call each and everybody in this audience to come and be part of these events because I would not miss any of this. And as Alan said before, we have the Hydrogen Symposium, which has already talked about. I don't want to repeat his words. You wouldn't miss this event. Please come and attend. And more details will be posted as time goes on. And finally, we always have the energy banquet in the spring semester. This is coming forth in April, and this is our closing event of the year, where we prepare a dinner and then hand over power from some of the executive members to a new group that can come and represent. And these opportunities are available to everybody who is a university student. Please look up at our website. The QR code you see on the right-hand side, that's our group me, where we post all the opportunities and all the news and events about the Energy Coalition. Please, you can take a minute to scan or second, but as well as the URL will be posted in the chat as we go on. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned before, we have a pool talk. This is a conversation with energy professionals. This is a very upcoming event that is in the nearest future. It's going to be in the games room in the student center on February 21st from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. And we are going to have an opportunity to meet energy professionals, and to be more specific, even our speaker today is going to be part of this event. So I would wish that anyone attending this webinar would love to meet Don Victory in person. So please don't miss this event on 21st of February in the games room in the Student Center. So the QR code you see on the right, that will help you to register. And to emphasize this event, because we have a small room in the games room, we are going to be taking students on first come and first serve basis. So if you want to be part of this event, this is an opportunity for you to register as soon as possible, because when you get the required number, we shall have no option apart from closing the registration. Next slide, please. And I want to take this opportunity to introduce to you our speakers today. The main speaker, Don Victory, is the founder and chair of the Energy Mentors, previously Upstream Chief Process Engineers at ExxonMobil. I also want to introduce Sarah Grace Kimberly, is also one of our executive members in the Energy Coalition. She's the vice chair of design and also investment banking, summer analyst at Jefferies. And I want to hand over the floor to our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. All right. Firstly, I want to start off with a question about your background, Don. Can you just let us know how you got to where you are today, as well as why you started your program, Energy Mentors?
I'm an aberration in the 21st century. I had actually worked 40 years for the same company. Now, that might translate to some people as like I had a master plan and there was something that was put in the tracks, and no, that's not true at all. Actually, I had what I would call an agile career journey, in that I really didn't appreciate where I was going in the long term specifically, but I actually did keep on with what I needed to do in order to kind of compound long-term success. So I'm kind of have a funny career path, even though I was with one company for 40 years. I grew up in Connecticut. I was born in New York City. I moved to Texas in 1981. Within months of coming here, oil prices crashed. And everything changed. And there was a savings and loan crisis in Texas in '86. And the economy went bad and real estate prices went down by 50%. And somehow I kept on, and 40 years later, I retired as chief engineer. And as I was approaching retirement, I had some questions that I had to consider, like, what am I going to do with the next 20, 30 years of my life? I really enjoyed my chief engineer job. I was mentoring lots of young teams, younger being people like in their 30s and 40s and 20s at ExxonMobil. I was advising on big strategy questions. I just didn't want to do that 5 days a week going into the office, and it wasn't an option for me to be a chief engineer part-time. So I actually came up with a strategy where I recreated outside of work a chief engineer position where I give my time away 1 or 2 days a week, and I don't owe anybody anything, and I can concentrate on my true retirement priorities, which are hanging out with my wife and traveling with her, hanging out and being grandpa, donating 1 or 2 days a week to Energy Mentors, and transferring knowledge to a rising generation of professionals, which is, kind of why I'm here today. And then, oh yeah, I will play a few rounds of golf along the way. So now I've started this agile retirement journey. I created a nonprofit, Energy Mentors, and I've had 2 minimum viable products, if you're used to the terms of agile innovation. The first one was a student virtual internship, international energy internship. We had 90 students from across India and Bangladesh and Nigeria and Kenya who attended last summer. It was done in cooperation with the Institute of Technology at Ropar in India. And the second one is a design competition, Power the Community, which is for student teams to reimagine the energy infrastructure behind a new community of 2,000 residences, affordable on the combined salary of a nurse and a school teacher. And it's kind of defined that way, so that way teams in Botswana and India and Baton Rouge can define for their community what their energy needs are. Is it low cost? Is it sustainability? Is it reliability? It's probably a bunch of all three. And one reason I did that is through academic studies, it's actually been found old people like me don't come up with new ideas. In fact, true innovation isn't really by people over the age of 40. It's really under the age of 40 in the 20s and 30s that people do their best work. If you look at Mozart, if you look at Darwin, which is theory of evolution, if you look at the Beatles, if you look at music, Paul McCartney's still a great musician, But is he writing cutting edge music, or does he really know his craft well? And is he helping in some cases, he combined with Michael Jackson, who is a rising star, to create new innovative music by synergizing that experience with the innovation of the youth. So that's a little bit about what I'm about and how I spend my time.
That's great. I love the music metaphors. Also, I am on a team for Power the Community, so that's super interesting.
You didn't tell me that before.
I know. I learned today when I was talking to my friend who's on the team, and I told him that I was going to be interviewing you, that that's your project. So that's super cool.
There's a prize pool, grand prize winner, $10,000, $31,000 combined prize pool. So
I know, that's awesome. So I had no idea that that was your project, but that's really cool. I guess, can you tell us a little bit more about agile innovation and what that term means and how we can apply it to our careers as we're coming out of college?
Yeah, people sometimes get focused on trying to define everything between here and there. And it happens with industrial research projects, it happens with marketing plans. And oh yeah, we try to do it in our life. It's like, okay, I'm at age 20 or 21. What are the 500 steps that are going to get me to age 65 or retirement? And too many things happen in the real world, but more importantly, you learn too much on the journey. So out of the software and even industrial innovation program, you can find this on Wikipedia. They talk about agile innovation, which it says, okay, set a North Star, zoom out. Where do you want to be 10 or 20 or 40 years from now? But don't worry about the steps in year 2 through 40, okay? Focus on the 1 or 2 most important things that you should be delivering on in the next 3, 6, 12 months. You're in school, right? So your focus is on getting grades, as well as should be, and maybe setting up for a college internship between your sophomore and junior year. And those are the things that move the dial, and focus on those two. And yeah, everything else you got to take care of. You got to pay your bills and show up at class and things like turning your homework. But if you focus on those two, you probably have a pretty good chance of maximizing the results this year and delivering you best prepared for that long-term journey.
Yeah, I like that. And I feel like a lot of us coming out of college are really focused on planning because up until that point and up until we graduate, everything has been planned out. We turn 6, we go to school every single year. If we do the right things, we move on to the next level. And so I think when we get to our careers, that's maybe no longer as true, and can be harder for us to deal with and adjust to. And so I know I read a little bit in some of the materials beforehand that a lot of students rush their careers. And so how can we avoid rushing our careers and focus on learning during the first couple of years of our jobs?
It's a balance, and it takes 2 things. Like I said, setting a North Star, you know where you want to get. You do want to be in the moment, and you need to deliver on what you're asked to deliver. And so during the course of your semester, right, you have a long-term project due at the end of the semester. You need, it turns out better if you work along the way. Part of that also gets to training and learning. And so you have to pay attention to not only what you're doing right now, but also kind of building skills for the future. So I play a bunch of golf, right? And so I ask students, okay, I'm standing over the golf ball in the 5th hole. I'm about to hit the shot. Okay, can I control the shot I'm going to hit tomorrow? Or the shot I hit on the last hole? I got to focus and be in the moment. But the flip side of that question is, I finished my round. Can I influence my shot next year? And the answer is yeah, because I can eat healthy, I can lift weights, I can take yoga for flexibility. So I need to be in the moment. I need to deliver what's important, but I still need to kind of look out in front of the headlights and say, okay, what are some things I can do to set myself up, and don't take on too many, So like I said, if you're in school right now, getting good grades now, delivering on the semester, and setting up a college internship, or if you're a senior, setting up for job interviews and preparing for that, that's the most important thing you could do. When you get on the job, okay, you're going to be given an assignment, and guess what? You're going to be unqualified to do it. Okay. Everyone who joins a company is not qualified to do what they give you. But if you kind of fall in love with learning, Ray in the last seminar talked about falling in love with a problem. My corollary to that is fall in love with learning as an adder. If you learn if you identify the problem, and if you learn how to attack things and how to solve things, then that kind of sets you up for success. So in the future, when you get on the job, concentrate on delivering in the near term, and do one or two things to set you up for the long term. Maybe we can touch on some of that later.
Great. Yes, definitely. Now for this seminar, I prepared some questions from other students at UH. So I want to go ahead and start asking some of those. The first two have to deal with diversity because, as you know, UH is incredibly diverse and has a large international student population. And what I found through talking to other students is that often people are concerned that they will not fit in at work or that they'll be presumed to be a diversity hire. So should students be worried about not fitting in? And if they don't fit in, how should students negotiate their differences at work?
That's a natural reaction. Even when I came to Texas from New York and Connecticut, okay, I worried about fitting in. I talked faster than most people. In 1981, there were signs "Yankees go home." I mean, so maybe I had the right skin color, but it was a different culture. So it's a natural reaction. But what I could suggest practically is that people should kind of take stock of what brought them to where they are. And they should also think about the context of the business that's hiring them. So in terms of taking stock, you're all going to a state university, okay? University of Houston, great. I went to the University of Connecticut, very analogous. I even went to a local campus of the University of Connecticut, not the main campus, for 2 years. There's only 500 students, and I lived at home to save money, okay? So take stock. You're coming from a state university. You got a job interview. You must have good enough grades. You probably have some work experience. Could be working as a bartender or waiting tables. It might be maybe you had an internship or two that's relevant to your job field. So, and then you went to a job interview and someone, hopefully, if you got the job, you must have done your homework, right? You Googled the company, you looked at how they're in business, what are their strategic priorities, maybe even, the really excellent candidates look at analysts or quarterly earnings meetings or that are posted on the internet, those type of things. So you're prepared, you got in the door, okay? They want you. In fact, they spend a lot of money to get you, okay? So there's lots of reasons why people hire people. You can't overanalyze it. The fact is you're there, and in their business context, they expect you to deliver. They expect you to deliver business results. Now, when you first get there, the result you have to deliver is coming up to speed quickly and professionally, and then hopefully contributing, adding to whatever that company is delivering as a product or a service. And they're also expecting you to do it with the right behaviors. In fact, if you look at most performance appraisal systems, the two most essential things they look at is, hey, what did this person contribute? And are they contributing with the right behaviors? And I don't mean like the social niceties and not being a jerk. I mean, that's like table stakes. You have to start there. But I'm also talking about, are people kind of creating clarity, and are they having the courage to put out, and are they bringing along, are they making decisions on data and logic and analysis and clarity of thought, or are they just winging it and using bias or things like that? So those are the type of things that companies are looking for. And if they got you in the door, they want you to succeed. Now, if there's people that have human frailties and someone may not do things right at this moment or that moment, but in general, that organization wants you to succeed, wants you to deliver for them, and is going to give you the tools to do that. So if you focus on that, that's essential, that they want you to deliver, you got in the door, and now's your opportunity. Be in the moment, deliver on your near-term priorities, and spend some discretionary time building skills for the longer term.
Great. Yeah. And as for those skills in the longer term, what are some tangible skills or pieces of advice you can give the students on the webinar as they come out of college to succeed in those first couple years? So I know that we talked about being able to learn and take advice and learn the business. But as for like maybe some skills that would put us ahead of the other people who are coming in with us, what are some advice you have for that?
Yeah, and that's going to depend on discipline, right? If you're a business major, or if you're a computer programmer, or if you're a process engineer like me, there's probably some that apply to everybody. Okay, confession: I occasionally use ChatGPT, right? So I'm a guy approaching age 65. I'm messing with AI. So does that guarantee success? No, it's just a tool for efficiency. One of the things I can really suggest, and this applies to all discipline, is use your discretionary time to understand the business of the business. Okay, you have your own specific job skill. If you're programming in Python or something like that, you got to learn that stuff. But it's also important to know how your company's making money and what their business strategies and priorities are. And that's something I probably did not do in my first years. I'm more interested in technology. I'm more interested in getting the right technical answer. I didn't pay attention as much as I should have to budgets and even filing my personal expense accounts. I once got a reprimand on that. Probably had them overlook me and put me on the technical ladder rather than the managerial ladder. Oops. I eventually became a manager about 20 years later, but if you need to understand how the business makes business. And if there's a practical advice, so I spend my time kind of scouring social media. Look up Secret CFO. It's on LinkedIn, it's on Twitter, X, and it's probably the single most educational business advice I've seen on all social media. So if you only follow one account and you're trying to learn the business of business, look at that.
Great.
CFO being Chief Financial Officer.
Yes, of course. And then you mentioned finance. I know you're talking about within the job function or within the business, but how can we position ourselves financially to start our careers as we come out of college?
Yeah, the first thing is if you're at University of Houston, you probably made some right strategic decisions. Okay, you're not spending $50,000 or $60,000 a year on education. You're spending, if you're on campus, what, 25? If you're commuting, 10 or 15, I don't know what the number is. Okay, so debt is a really bad burden in life. I know some of you probably out there have student loans. Okay, if you do, try to minimize them. If you have a summer job, think about using some of that money to pay the next semester bills and not taking as big a loan next semester. I actually worked 4 years in an ice cream shop all during high school, and I lived at home 2 years. The university costs were a little bit lower, but I actually I paid for my own college myself, not my parents, and graduated without debt. But when I moved to Houston, I needed money to borrow money to buy a car, and I got to Houston, I was dead broke, but I wasn't in debt. So that's number one. When you get on the job, I used to kind of surprise new hires in my organization, but I said, this is my number one career advice. Pay yourself first. Take 20% of your paycheck, put it in the company's savings plan, 401k, invest it in long-term equities. Warren Buffett, who's like the world's superstar investor, age 90 plus, he says no one can beat the S&P 500. Okay, so or at least they haven't any time in the last century and a half. So put your savings in there, pay yourself first. That will compound over time. And when you retire in your 60s, it's almost guaranteed that you'll be, even after inflation, a millionaire. It's more important than trying to elbow your way through the organization. It's not what you make, it's what you keep and save and compound over many decades.
Perfect. And then on the topic of defeating career anxiety, I think a lot of us have some anxiety about failing throughout our career, whether it be small or huge. And what advice do you have? Can you tell us about a time that maybe you failed in your career? And if we do fail, how can we deal with that and overcome it and move forward?
It will happen. It's tough. I already mentioned one career failure, right? I was about 8 or 9 years into my career. I spent a month out at a site on a turnaround. During that time, I had bills for the motel I was staying in, eating, whatever. We were doing some great stuff. In fact, that year, I helped shut down some equipment that allowed us to get this increased production 12%, right? Really counterintuitive. Great stuff. I didn't fill in my expense account. I had all these charge cards out there that went like 6 months. I ignored it because I was like paying attention to what I thought was important. I actually got a letter of reprimand from the company. It's like, you got to pay attention to this. So I reformed. That one I didn't internalize as much at the time as a failure, but it actually was, and it held me back. I didn't understand the business of the business and what were some of the minimums of the business in terms of expectations. About 30 years in my career, I was a project manager, and we had a joint interest partner, and I was helping define the front end cost of the project. And there was an option that was in one of the contracts, and the contractor misunderstood the option, and they said, no, it's gonna, we priced it at $500,000, but if you really want to do what you're saying, it's going to be $2.5 million, because it's going to require a lot more innovative and different work, not just copy and paste. And I looked at that work and how much work they would have to do, and I understood. I documented, okay, this is a reasonable cost increase. The joint interest partner was not happy that I took that attitude, that it was a reasonable cost increase. They called the president of the division that I was in and asked me to be removed from that project. It was kind of a big setback. I had to figure out in the daytime how I was going to not embarrass the joint interest partner, how to keep the project moving, how to get the right business result, and not make it about me. I needed to make sure that they were all a success. And oh, by the way, if I had acted small, it probably would have been really self-defeating from a career point of view. It would have been one big bad mark upon another. I was a wreck. During the day, I was as clear and functional and operated like a stiletto, doing everything I need to do. At night, I was awake all night. At one point, I was transiting through an airport. I couldn't walk 20 feet to get to the next check-in desk. I was catatonic, literally. I couldn't move. I got over it. It was hard. It happens. Okay. But now, if I look back, would that have changed where I retired in my company? Actually not. I got put on another path. It turned out okay. I retired after 40 years. I got 4 great kids. I got 4 young grandkids. In January, my wife and I went on a trip to Patagonia, South America. It took time to heal, but there are career setbacks. It happens. It's not easy. It has to be worked through.
Yeah. Can you elaborate on what you mean by acted small?
If I complained, if I was passive, if I was a victim, okay? So there was a mess, right? It was embarrassing. Not for me, it was embarrassing for everybody involved, okay? The people internal to my company actually understood there was maybe a mix-up in communication or something like that. But the business required that they still needed to get on with the project and the big picture. And they still needed to keep the other company happy. So I actually reached out to everyone in the chain of command that influenced that project and set up a meeting and said, okay, this happened, but I know what the business priorities are. Okay, this project has to be a success. The other company has to be a success. ExxonMobil needs to deliver on their commitments. And so I'm committed to stay on the deck of the ship for the next few weeks until you find my replacement. No one will know. I'll say my family, situation didn't allow me to move, and we need to make sure this is done smoothly and efficiently, because it's about the business. It's not about me. So I kind of took ownership of it. Okay, and when I met with these people, they were kind of like relieved. They felt sorry for me, but they also didn't know how to react. Okay, and they also knew that they had a potential mess. And so I kind of told them, I'm not going to contribute any more to the mess. And I'm going to own cleaning up whatever I can on my part of the mess. So, if I had just packed bags and gone home, they would have had more to deal with. But as it was, 3 weeks later, a new project manager came in. My team was kind of shocked when I told them, hey, I'm moving on to something else, but you got a replacement. And everything was good.
Wow, that sounds tough. And especially taking accountability and not taking it personally seems really difficult.
Hard.
Yeah, really difficult. And it seems like it takes a lot of maturity, but
Survival instinct.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was. It's like, what is my next step, right? So but it's hard.
Yeah, that was great advice. It seems like you're very focused on family throughout all of your responses so far. How have you managed to balance and keep your family a priority throughout your career, especially with all of the travel that has been a part of your career?
I'm fortunate. So there's lots of family arrangements. There's lots of family, who's your significant other? If you have a significant other, are you single? So when I first started my career, I was single. Then I wised up and actually I went back and married the girl in high school who sold me a $1 raffle ticket when I was age 16. It's been helpful to have a very supportive partner, and everything that's important in my life, my kids, my grandkids, but even my career success. If Joyce wasn't there, it would have been harder. So that's fortunate. Yeah, did I spend a lot of time on airplanes? Yes. When I was on airplanes and away, did I miss soccer games and basketball games? Yes. But when I was home, I tried to make it a priority to always, be the Pee Wee League coach or to show up at all the events. There's an old saying, 80% of life is showing up. And the question is, do you show up or do you not show up? You vote with your time. You vote, that's what's important to you. So when I could now, did I get the balance right? It seemed to be okay. Probably not perfect, but sometimes life isn't about making everything an A+ decision or an A+ effort. Okay, it's avoiding the D's and the F's. And so I got a whole bunch of maybe C+ for my kids or B's or whatever, but I think I avoided the D's and the F's.
You vote with your time. That's great. I read somewhere recently that especially for us, most of us aren't parents yet. And so thinking about our parents and realizing that it's their first time living life also, and that they're also figuring it out as we're going along, just to give everyone a little bit of grace. So I know we talked about failure. Now I would like to transition to success, a little more of a fun topic. How do you define a successful career, and how has that changed throughout your career and throughout your life?
So my dad was an independent nuts and bolts salesman. So I always thought I wanted to one day go in business with myself. Lo and behold, I worked 40 years for the world's largest oil and gas company. Even now that I have my nonprofit, I'm finding I have skills that are inadequate to the challenge. I'm not good at promotion. I'm not good at fundraising. I like to put together concepts. I need to more build my team. I'm doing okay. We got 40 teams signed up for the competition. I just got one yesterday from Lagos, Nigeria. But I could take that to the next level. So, and I used to tell people when I was working, in my career, I didn't get as far as I maybe wanted when I was young, but I think I got farther than I deserved. And when I say that, what I mean is that in most cases, I was my own career limiting step. It wasn't the company or external. I gave two examples, right? I didn't turn in an expense account and was probably looked over for the next supervisor job, okay? Or I was sloppy in what I wrote and how I positioned it, and I didn't think of the context of the other party, and I had a major career setback. But hey, now I'm 65. I mentioned my wife and I were just able to enjoy a vacation to South America. This Saturday, we're going down to Galveston to hang out with our two granddaughters who are age 3 and 1. And that's pretty good. When my dad passed away, he had all 20 of his grandchildren showed up at his funeral from around the world. He was bad at money. He was bad at business. He wasn't a great father, a great husband. He actually was a great father and a really super grandfather. He did some things wrong in his life, some things right, but in general, he got the big enough things right that it's okay. So it's a matter of how you define success. And at the end of the day, and no one ever shows up at a funeral and said this person should have showed up more hours at the office. It's usually a lot more human and about family and about, what impact they made on other people. And that's usually their legacy. I can afford to be more philosophical. I'm older now.
That's great. So we're going to open it up to student questions at 10:45. So audience, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I will read a couple out loud depending on how much time we have. But before we do that, I just wanted to ask if you had anything else that you wanted to share. Anything that comes to mind.
Did we touch on imposter syndrome? Yeah.
A little bit in the beginning with the diversity question, but
okay.
If you want to elaborate, that would be great.
That's really, a lot of people run into it. Doesn't matter gender. Some people say it falls more to one gender than another. But people still kind of doubt their skills and their talents and their accomplishments, and they have the psychological fear of being called out as a fraud or whatever. But yeah, I guess we did say, take stock of where you are and where you're going. Everything will turn out okay. They want you to be there.
Yes, and I think imposter syndrome can also be especially prevalent with younger people. Like I have a few friends who I've seen move up really quickly in their career, and they're potentially younger than some of the people that they're managing, and but they're qualified and they're doing a great job.
Yeah, and that's the point. Basically, everyone is unqualified in some aspect in their job. Peter Drucker, one of the great management gurus, said you're lucky if a person has one really strong suit in their set, and almost no one has two. That's kind of like startling to hear. But, the job of companies and management is to match up the business challenge with a person's strong suit, and you're always learning, right? I mentioned I'm learning Chat GPT and AI, so if you take life as a learning opportunity and experience and embrace that, it's okay.
Yeah, certainly. And then I guess one more question that came to mind while we were talking about imposter syndrome is for people who change their mind for their career pursuits. So say you were originally an engineer, but then you decided you wanted to be in business. How can they go about that transition and tackling any imposter syndrome or feeling like they're less qualified than their previous role?
When you do that, there's usually a reason. So some of my kids have done that. So I had one son started out college in theater performance. He graduated an engineer. He worked for Chevron for a couple of years. He was living in California. He moved back to Austin, took a 16-week software boot camp, and now working in information technology at the University of Texas. He's now getting about half the salary he had at UT, but he's in a lower cost of living, and he's in the same city with his fiance as of last weekend. He had to take a step back, but it was what he wanted to do. He wasn't finding, he was asked to go work in a refinery in Vietnam for a month, and it was coming up, and he just couldn't get excited about it. So sometimes you have to make that decision and recognize you may be taking a step back in status, in salary. Like I said, he's about 50% pay cut right now. Hopefully we'll catch up a bit. But he's happy, and he's embraced that. So it's harder, you in some cases you really can't think what other people think about you, right? I drive a 9-year-old car. I don't care. I'd rather spend my money traveling. So if you're gonna take and if you make a strategic decision, then do it. Don't sit around for 6 months. If you really know what the decision is, there's no optimal time. So the best thing to do is get on with it, because any new job will have a learning curve, right? And how do you overcome the learning curve? Go through it. No choice.
Yeah, you learn. All right, so I guess we can transition to some audience questions. The first one is from Arash, and it is, how do you see careers for students with focus on air quality and climate, and how can those connect to energy careers? So I guess sustainability versus energy directly.
Almost all companies will need to deal not only with sourcing reliable, cheap energy, but making sure it's sustainable. So air quality, what was the other element to that? Climate, yeah. So it's CO2 emissions. And so I actually, in my last year at ExxonMobil, I was actually not chief engineer. That wasn't what I was doing day to day. I was actually chief greenhouse gas accountant. I was helping to set up a system in order to improve our worldwide real-time accounting of greenhouse gas equivalent emissions. It turned out that by the time we scoped it together, it was a $400 million project. Companies don't appreciate, I think, right now what they have about to hit them. The SEC has proposed that all companies submit data for greenhouse gas emissions equivalent to the accuracy and the rely upon degree of financial information. Okay, so now reporting of greenhouse gas emissions is going to go for publicly reported companies from a volunteer activity where engineering accuracy is good enough to completely auditable and punishable by fines and jail sentences. So there's going to actually be a pretty big business in order to get all those companies to properly account for greenhouse gas emissions. So that's just one very tangible example. It's a theme. If society's decided it's important, you could say it's a growth industry. You just have to be careful of, is this company a mirage and they're going to go bust, or does this company have a plan that has legs in order to deliver value for what has been regulated?
Yeah, that's super interesting. I didn't know that was happening. Okay, our next question is from Jessica Wynn, and she says, related to mentorship, do you have suggestions on how to seek for your advocates at work? So I think maybe advocating for others at work, and then also how to find your own mentors at work.
Yes, so some of that terminology, when I first heard it when I was manager, was like foreign language to me, because we didn't grow up with that terminology or even that mindset or systems. But it still kind of went on. So I mentioned I moved to Houston, okay? I didn't have any network. I didn't have any support system. A bunch of young people hired on ExxonMobil at the same time, and I kind of hung out with them. We did industrial league basketball and played tennis and things like that. And we had our formal managers and supervisors, and there were some experienced engineers down the hall that someone would say, go talk to them to see how stuff is done. What I would say is, first you have to deliver the goods. Your work product speaks loudly. Sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes it also has to be noticed properly. But there should be, if you're actually using proper team collaboration skills and tapping your resources. So, I got a question once about how does a young person, especially female, develop mentors at a company and go about it? And, there's a calendar function. And so most people who are older in their career, they love to talk. They love to opine. They love to give opinions how people should do stuff. But the twist I would add is, go ahead and identify some people, not necessarily all in your same department. If you're an engineer, do talk to people in finance, but book a time in their calendar. Say, this is what I've been asked to do. I want to share with you how I intend to go do it. Because that way you're showing you've done your homework, you're respectful of their time. And I would like a friendly cold eyes review of your impression of what I may be missing. Okay? Because then it becomes a value add conversation for the other person. They know that you've done your homework, you're coming to them, you're humble enough to know that you need help on finding out what you don't know. And most people are willing to do that. And if you do that with 10 or 20 people, you'll probably click with 1 or 2 or 3 of them. Okay, and those will stay over time. So most people, if you say, hi, will you be my mentor? They'll go, sure. Really? Okay, but if you say, hey, I'm doing something for the company, I've done my homework, okay, I need your valuable perspective, their response is, wow, they actually appreciate what I can bring to the party. It's not about what I can do for them, it's what we can do for it's a whole different mojo.
A lot of sense. All right. Thank you so much for all of the advice you've given throughout the session. It's been super helpful for me, and I hope as well for the audience. We have one more question before I'll turn it back over to the moderators. And the last question is from Amelia, and it reads, what were the attributes of your most profitable coworker or employee, and what were the attributes of your most popular and favorite coworker or employee?
I'm not going to do favorite, I'm going to do the most illustrative. So I'm going to tell the story of Laura. Okay, so there was a major project, and we're talking a $10 billion project. Offshore platform, foreign country, being fabricated in a foreign country, a separate foreign country. For like 6 years, the engineering team and the construction team just weren't getting it collectively. During that time, we went through 2 engineering managers. So Laura started as maybe a 10-year engineer on the project. She's now a 15-year engineer. It's getting $8 billion have been spent. This platform needs to sail out of the fabrication yard in 6 months. It needs to start up in a year and a half. It's a project that was featured in the annual report, right? It's high profile. This was a close run thing. The engineering manager, thankfully, was going to retire. Now it's time to pick a new one. So the project manager came to us in the function and said, I want one of your employees, Laura, to be the new engineering manager. Now, my boss was in the meeting. I own the process engineers. He owned all the facility engineers for project work. And his first reaction was, I was just in a meeting with Laura this morning. She disappeared into the wall. She didn't say a word. She was quiet as a church. And the project manager said, well, that's her style, but that's part of her culture, but that's not what really makes her a compelling candidate. Everything I've ever asked her, she's delivered on. She gets along with everybody. Stuff just happens. So there was a dialogue, and to my boss's credit, he listened and he said, okay, we'll go with Laura. Okay. Meanwhile, my boss is knowing This is an unconventional choice. If the project goes in the ditch, everybody is going to be hurting. Okay. He went with Laura. Project manager went with Laura. A year later in the performance review, the vice president over that project, his input on Laura was, as soon as Laura was appointed, all the issues between engineering and construction went silent. The schedule was maintained. We sailed out on time. Laura grew up in Venezuela. She hired into our Venezuela affiliate. You know, in that culture, okay, what is prized is personal relationships, teamwork, not standing up in front of a room, commanding an audience. What our company values when I worked, you know, was what are the results that people have the right behaviors to get those results. So it may not have been the command the room externalities, but it was the behaviors that mattered, which were getting people to come together to work. So, you know, Laura's an introvert, but it was also her superpower. And her superpower was having people come together. So as a final thought, be true to yourself. Don't try to change your personality. You may have to tell your boss, hey, I'm an introvert, for example, but that's good for you because when there's a room full of people talking, I actually listen and gather data. And then I think, and then I take decisive action. And don't you want someone who actually listens and thinks and takes action versus people who just talk? So you may have to help your boss understand where you're coming from, but it's really about those type of capabilities that are true success.
Great. Thank you. That was awesome. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Paul and Dr. Rossiter to close out the session. But thank you so much, Don, for that fantastic session.
Thank you so much, Don and Sarah Grace. Rutuja, if you can bring the slides back up, I'll just talk a little bit while you're doing that. But first off, as another 60-plus-year-old man, I have to say I really resonated with pretty much everything that Don said there. And so, yeah, that was a great bit of wisdom coming from someone who's really been in the trenches, and it's really appreciated. Also, just following up on a few things that have come through on chat and by text messages and so on while we've been on this call. I will be reopening the quiz from last week for one day because I know some people were not able to get in, and so that is going to be done. There was also another question, and this really goes to Don. Are you willing for people to approach you to a link on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. Follow me. You know, I thought about, should I have used LinkedIn to crowdsource information for this talk? Should I ask other people about defeating career anxiety? I didn't do that, but I do use it fairly well. But yes, reach out. I'll be at the upcoming event on February 21. So can I do retail one-on-one mentoring? I fit a little bit of here in here and there, but if one way I can do it at scale is if you follow me, then you can see where I actually thought about something and put something out there.
Great, thank you very much, Don. And just following up on your comment there, and I'm not sure if we'll get the slides back up or not, but I did put the link again for that pool talk session that Don mentioned on February 21. So if you've not yet registered for that, and if you've not yet reached our capacity, please sign up. And actually, the only other thing I really wanted to mention or to remind you about was the Hydrogen Symposium, which is coming up in April, and I will put the link back in the chat for that as well. And that pretty much ends our program for today. So thank you everyone for joining us. A reminder that we're back here same time, same channel next Friday with Sharon Nolan from Eastman. And I look forward to seeing y'all there. So before I forget, the quiz for today's session will probably be delayed a few hours, so it's not going to be opening immediately after this webinar, but if you come back late this afternoon, it should be available. Okay, thanks everyone, and time to go. So thanks again, and see you next week. Thank you, Don. Great job.
You're welcome.